Hello, welcome to the Chapter 3 Confidential Income Statements training. This training is presented by the Oregon Department of Education Child Nutrition Programs, also known as ODE CNP. In this training, we will go over the who, what, when, why, how, and where of confidential income statement forms. By the end of this training, you should understand the requirements of the CIS form more in depth, knowing who distributes and returns the form, what the form is, when the form is required to be completed by families, why this form is completed, how the form is distributed and collected, and where the form can be found. So let's start with who needs to use the CIS form. These forms are used by childcare centers on the CACFP, including for-profit centers, which are required to validate each month that they qualify to claim the meal reimbursement at each approved site that meets the 25% eligibility criteria. The CIS form is used to support this criteria. Pricing programs, which are required to collect CIS forms from participants throughout the year, and any Head Start programs that plan to claim sibling and/or community slot meals, as these centers must create a one-month enrollment roster, or OMER, for each ODE CNP approved site that will be claiming such meals. Therefore, an eligibility determination must be made for each sibling and/or community slot participant included on the OMER. Adult daycare programs are also required to distribute CIS forms and the letters to households, but it is important to know that there are specific versions of the documents for adult daycare programs available on our website. For additional information on the adult daycare program exceptions to the CIS form, please refer to the adult daycare program training. The CIS is a confidential income statement. This is a form that is completed by the participant's parent or guardian and is used by the sponsor to determine the participant's eligibility category of either free, reduced price, or above scale. The CIS form is distributed along with the letter to household. The letter of household is a fillable document that explains to the participants and the parent or guardians about the confidential income statement, who to contact if they need more information on how to fill out the form, or if they have questions about the CACFP. The outcome of this form does not determine whether a participant is eligible to be provided CACFP meals, but is used to determine the category in which the sponsor will receive reimbursement for that participant. Those categories are free, reduced price, or above scale. Let's discuss this more by jumping into the why. The sponsor's unique reimbursement rate is determined by the number of participants in each eligibility category. Sponsors receive the highest reimbursement for meals served to participants approved in the free category, slightly less reimbursement for meals served to participants approved in the reduced price category, and the lowest reimbursement for meals served to participants approved in the above scale category. To determine this unique reimbursement rate, CIS forms are distributed, completed by the households, and returned to the sponsor. A more in-depth description of the percentage reimbursement method can be found in the Chapter 4 training regarding the percentage reimbursement method. Enrollment in a center or participation in CACFP cannot be contingent upon the parent or guardian completing the CIS. Sponsors are not required to have a CIS for every participant, and parents or guardians cannot be required to submit a CIS. If a parent or guardian chooses not to complete a CIS, the participant is automatically determined as above scale. Sponsors may choose not to distribute or collect CIS forms from participants. If a sponsor decides not to distribute or collect CIS forms, then that sponsor would claim all meals in the above scale category. As mentioned in the WHO slide, the CIS forms are also used by for-profit centers. The CIS are collected not only to determine the percentage reimbursement rate, but also to determine if the center meets the 25% eligibility criteria each month. CIS forms may be completed and submitted by households at any time during the year. Each sponsor may have their own process for annually distributing and collecting these forms. The CIS must be updated annually, and the eligibility is valid for only 12 months. The CIS is considered current and valid until the last day of the month in which the form was dated and signed by the sponsor's approving official 1 year earlier. For example, a CIS signed and dated by a sponsor on January 12, 2025 is considered valid until January 31st, 2026. Most sponsors find it easiest to collect new CIS forms from households in July or August, when ODE-CMP issues the new federal income guidelines, CIS forms, and the letter to households for the new fiscal year. As previously mentioned, ODE-CMP updates the CIS and letter to households annually after receiving the new form requirements from USDA every July 1st. The updated form and letters are posted on the ODE-CMP website, and sponsors are notified of the update. Sponsors must distribute current CIS forms and current letter to households to all enrolled participants at enrollment and annually thereafter. The distribution process for each sponsor may look different. Some examples as to how we've seen this done are sending these documents through the mail, given in person, or provided in enrollment packets. Parents or guardians or adult participants should complete and return the CIS form to the sponsor. The letter to households provided to each parent or guardian or participant does not need to be collected. They're only for informational purposes to the households, informing them of program benefits. Once a form is submitted, the sponsor will review the form for completeness. If completed correctly, the sponsor will determine the participant's eligibility based on the information provided on the form and complete the sponsor use section of the form. It's important to remember sponsored officials may not complete any part of the household section of the CIS for a parent or guardian or adult participant unless the parent or guardian or adult participant cannot read or write, has a disability, and requires assistance, or requests or requires sponsor assistance to complete the CIS form for any other reason identified by them. After the eligibility is determined, it is the sponsor's responsibility to ensure that the forms are kept on file in a secure, confidential location for the required 3 years plus the current year. It's important to remember that if a CIS form is not completed and returned by the household, the sponsor must categorize that participant as above scale. The CIS forms and the current income eligibility guidelines can be found on the ODE-CMP CACFP public webpage. You'll find these forms under CACFP Resources Forms Documents column, and then under the Child Care Sponsors drop-down menu. Let's do a knowledge check. Which of the following sponsors distribute and collect CIS forms and letter to households? For-profit centers, pricing programs, at-risk programs, Head Start programs with community or sibling slots, options A, B, and D, or all of the above. All right, the answer is E. It includes for-profit centers, pricing programs, and Head Start programs with community sibling slots. Here's our next knowledge check. A sponsor receives a CIS form from a parent or guardian, but notices that the form is not fully completed by the household. What should the sponsor do? Your options are: consider the form incomplete, mark the participant as above scale, return the parent to the parent or guardian to correct the missing items, process the form as if there was enough information to make a determination, or the last option would be both A and B. And the answer is D. Sponsors may decide to return the form to the parent or guardian to correct the missing information. If a form is returned to the parent or guardian, the form may not be processed by the sponsor until it is returned and complete. The sponsor may also make the decision to determine the participant's eligibility as above scale since the form is incomplete when submitted. To review, during this training we discussed who distributes and collects the CIS form, what the CIS form is, why CIS forms are used, when the CIS form is used, how the forms are distributed and collected, and where to find the CIS forms. ODE supports equity and excellence for every learner. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. Thank you for taking this training.